are talking about Jerusalem being restored. And I want to tell you right now, so that you all remember, that next week we will not have this class at 8 o'clock or 11, neither one. So either one you come to, we won't have it next week, because I want to make sure and do the last chapter of Ezekiel together on that week after. So that'll be our last one for Ezekiel. And those of you that come to the Bible study on Wednesday night, we won't be having that Bible study because we'll be in with, what's his name? Roger Russell. We'll be in with him on that night, so we won't have Bible study. This coming Wednesday we will. It's the following Wednesday.
Are we having praise team that Friday?
Yes, we need to.
Yeah, 'cause we don't
All
have
right, so this was the original outline that we looked at on the Ezekiel chapters, starting from chapter 1 to chapter 48. You'll notice that today we're going to be talking about chapters 40 to 46. And in case you're curious, after Ezekiel, we have Haggai, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Malachi, and Zechariah. So we have some fun prophecies to yet go through. In today's lesson, a mysterious man transports Ezekiel in a vision to Jerusalem. Did that happen before? Remember? The vision, this time though, the city is not in ruins. Remember when he was transported before, the city was in ruins. Do you remember what he saw in that vision, that old vision? Was it good news?
No,
Bad stuff. There were a bunch of idols they were worshiping in the temple. Remember that? And remember, it was so abhorrent that the Spirit of God moved out of the temple. Remember, he saw the pillar of fire and cloud leave the temple. So that was the vision before. So we're going to see a new vision of Jerusalem today, something that will be in the future. Now you might say, well, when in the future? Well, who knows? Reading Revelation 21 to 22 will do nothing but make you feel like you're dumb, because you just can't find it. It's really odd. So we are not getting to that yet, but what we're looking at is the potential of an eschatological New Jerusalem, something that's in the future at a time later. And there's no exact anything in Revelations that's very exact, except to say there was no temple. That it says that. So, so all along as we go today, you be thinking about when and where is this temple going to be, because it's different than the old one. Now, it's been a while since we have looked at the old temple. Maybe you weren't even with us when we did those studies that we looked at the old temple, starting with the tabernacle, and then remember that? Today, we're going to go back and review that stuff, that history of the temple and the presence of God. We're going to review that because by the week after next, when we do the last chapter, we're going to have a very interesting conundrum about when is this new temple and where is it. So that's what we'll be talking about, okay? So last week we had Gog and Magog and his crew eliminated. Ezekiel now presents a vision of the future, a rather fantastic, surreal future, which includes a dramatically restored Jerusalem and an intricately constructed new temple. Much of today's lesson will be somewhat of a review, but Ezekiel's vision is going to require that we remember the old, because he knows the old, and those people of his time, they knew what was. And so we kind of need to have that in mind to understand what Ezekiel is trying to say today, or better, what God is telling us through Ezekiel. So look at Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1. In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th month, in the 14th year after the fall of the city, on that very day. Okay, so in the 25th year. So how long has he been in exile? 25 years. At the beginning of the year, in the 10th month, this was April 28th, 573 BC, in case you wanted to know. On that very day, notice the exact scriptural words are, on that very day. Why is he saying it like that? Because he's going to tell this fantastic, weird thing, and you think, what was he? Was he smoking grass or something? How did he get? Where's this coming from? So he's trying to be very sure that you know exactly when, on this very day, the hand of the Lord was on me, and he took me there. In visions of God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain, on whose south side were some buildings that looked like a city. Plop. And Ezekiel sees Israel, the land of Israel, but there's a very high mountain. Does Israel have very high mountains?
No.
Not very high.
Jerusalem's a mound about 2,000 feet.
Up north.
So this is a little bit confusing, but my bells started going off because I had this recollection of something in Revelation about there being an earthquake under Jerusalem and things rising and a water coming down. I had all these remembrances of what I've read in Revelation. So is this connected to that? I don't know. It's a mystery. The book of Ezekiel opened with divine visions of the glory of God. And Ezekiel's called to be a prophet. That was on July of 593 BC. Then in September, Ezekiel received another set of visions in which he was transported from Babylon to Jerusalem, where he saw abominable practices being carried out in the temple and the glory of God leaving his temple in disgust. Remember that? Now we bring the book of Ezekiel to a close with a third set of visions. This time, visions of a new temple in a restored and healed land. Visions Ezekiel receives 573 BC. So let's look at the years. The first vision, then a year later, the second vision, and then 19 years later for the third vision. So there's been a big gap in time. Note in the 2-verse preamble that Ezekiel is set down on a very high mountain and something like a city built on it. In other words, what would you say? Well, it was kind of a city, but I'm not sure what city. So it didn't look like Jerusalem, right? Or it didn't look like anything he could put words to. So is that because it's so far into the future that he doesn't recognize it? Interesting. Ezekiel's visions that are about to unfold stretch far beyond the reality of the actual Jerusalem built on Mount Zion, a mere 2,500 feet above sea level, really just a mountain ridge. The mountain Ezekiel sees in his vision is magnificent, more akin to Mount Zaphon or Mount Olympus, but not akin to Israel. Look here. At the bottom on the left, well, I guess it's on your left. On the left side, it says Mount Olympus in Greece. That is a stunning mountain with snow-capped peaks. That would be the kind of mountain it seems like he's saying, right? But that's not in Israel. Look where that is. That's way out of Israel. Okay. So Zaphon, or Jebel al-Kara, is on the border of Turkey and Syria. It is not as high or impressive as Zaphon, but mysterious. You can see the tall mountain. The mariners recognized it because storm clouds would gather. They would kind of predict the storms are coming in. They would use it to notice the storm clouds coming in. But that doesn't seem like the kind of mountain he described. But maybe it could be, right? And then look at Jerusalem. It's just a little mound compared to these other high mountains. So after the 2-verse preamble, the remainder of Ezekiel's visions divide into 3 major units: God taking up residence in his new temple, Israel's response to God's presence. That's as far as we're going today. Next week, a distribution of the healed land to the 12 tribes. That's where we'll go next time. So Block is a researcher, a study guy, and he points out a very interesting parallel here. Ezekiel's concluding chapters mirror the Torah, Genesis through Deuteronomy. So if you wanted to do a deeper study and look at it, you could consider this. God taking up residence in his new temple in Ezekiel mirrors God taking up residence in the tabernacle at the end of Exodus. Israel's response to God's presence in the new temple mirrors Israel's response to God's presence in the tabernacle. And Distribution of the healed land to the 12 tribes mirrors the distribution of the land of Canaan to the 12 tribes in Numbers. I was very surprised that in Ezekiel it tells us that the tribes are going to have different land things, and I've got a little chart to show you when we get there. It's kind of interesting. It's not like it was before. You know, before they had like little pieces that were theirs. This time it's all like slotted out like this. Anyway, Ezekiel 40, verse 3. He took me there. I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. Okay, so his appearance is like bronze. What's that mean? 10? Maybe some sort of, yeah. An orangey tan. Maybe he was glowing. We don't know, you know, right? He was standing in the gateway with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. The man said to me, Son of man, look carefully and listen closely and pay attention to everything I am going to show you, for that is why you have been brought here. Tell the people of Israel everything you see. So these opening verses pair well with the closing verses of this section. I want to read to you the closing verses in chapter 43, verse 10. Son of man, describe the temple to the people of Israel that they may be ashamed of their sins. Let them consider its perfection, and if they are ashamed of all they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, its arrangement, its exits and entrances, its whole design, and all its regulations and laws. Write these down before them so that they may be faithful to its design and follow all its regulations. That's the ending of that section. In between, it gives you a lot of measurements. Yeah. And in between is the wall will be 4 cubits from the 2 cubits that you want. I mean, it's like, so we need to remember the idea of God living in midst of his people. Remember when David went to a house of God, but God would not permit him to do it? David wanted to build a house for God. And God said, no, you're not going to build me a house. That was in 2 Samuel 7. I have not dwelt in a house from the day I brought the Israelites up out of Egypt to this day. I have been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. What was the dwelling?
Tabernacle.
The tabernacle. When Moses meets God, God is in a burning bush. Not even in a house, right? He's in a burning bush. After Israel's exodus from Egypt, God instructs Moses to build a tabernacle. And that's a tent. The tabernacle was a kind of tent in which God dwelt in their midst. And they're supposed to build the tabernacle just the way God says. Do you remember when we read all those instructions? Oh my goodness. They were so detailed. We went through all of them. So we're not going to do it again. We're not going to, we did it. We went through it. Exodus 25, verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. These are the offerings you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and another type of durable leather, acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and the breastplate. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. So the voluntary contributions of the people were what was used to create the tabernacle. Do you remember all the details of the tabernacle?
No.
Yeah, me neither. But you can read them. They give you every little detail.
Yeah.
So Moses builds the tabernacle. And when it's finished, we read this. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. So God literally dwelt in the tent in their midst. And God was very particular about how he wanted his tent to be set up. Here's a picture. Remember this picture? Yeah, we went through all this. The pillar of cloud and the fire is right over what was called the Holy of Holies. The priests are going about their business. You can see inside there. The tabernacle was a portable structure. Remember, we talked about how the Levites would have to break it apart. And the one, okay, your family's in charge of this pole. You go get this pole. You go get that pole. Oh, and you're in charge of that piece of tent. Remember, the Levites were all around, and they each had a job to do. And they would take it apart, carry it to the next place, and put it back together. And they were experts at it because they were the only ones who did it. That was their job. Numbers 1, verse 50. Appoint the Levites to be in charge of the tabernacle of the covenant law, over all its furnishings and everything belonging to it. They are to carry the tabernacle and all its furnishings. They are to take care of it and camp around it. Whenever the tabernacle is to move, the Levites are to take it down, and whenever the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall do it. Anyone else who approaches it is going to have a really bad day. In fact, that will be their last day, because they would be put to death. That's how serious God takes his tabernacle. In case you were to think, oh, it's just a tent, no big deal, right? Once the Israelites settle in the land of Canaan, the tabernacle continues to move. We see it in Scripture. It's at Shiloh during the time of the judges. That's in Joshua 18:1. It's at Bethel during the time of Aaron's grandson Phinehas. That's in Judges 20. At Nob during the time of King Saul. That was in 1 Samuel, and later at Gibeon in 1 Chronicles. It was at Kiriath Jearim in 1 Chronicles 13. And finally, David moves the tabernacle with the Ark of the Covenant in it to Jerusalem. Do you remember that story? What do you remember about that story? When he
The
moves it
guy
to-
pushed it up and he died.
Yep, that was one. That was one.
Stopped it from crashing.
I just remember that his
It's
wife
like the
saw
dancing.
him.
Dancing.
Yeah, he was dancing,
She mocked him
and she mocked him. You look goofy out there. What do you think you're doing? That's what I remember.
but then she was cursed with barrenness.
That's right. 2 Samuel 6, verse 12. Now King David was told, the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God. So David went to bring up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. When those who were carrying the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, stop, we got to sacrifice a bull and a fattened calf. Wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and all Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sounds of trumpets. So the tabernacle and the ark sat in the courtyard of David's palace in Jerusalem, with the pillar of cloud and fire above it. That was affirming that David was the king, that God approved of David as the king. But David never abandoned the idea of building a house for God. Even though God said he would not permit him to do it, toward the end of David's life, he made detailed plans for his son Solomon to fulfill his dream of building a God's temple. And he made it luxurious. He had plans. He also gathered materials. We read in 1 Chronicles 22. So David gave orders to assemble the foreigners residing in Israel, and from among them he appointed stone cutters to prepare dressed stone for the building the house of God. He provided a large amount of iron to make nails for the doors of the gateways and for the fittings, and more bronze than could be weighed. He also provided more cedar logs than could be counted, for the Sidonians and Tyrians had brought large numbers of them to David. David said, "My son Solomon is young and inexperienced, and the house to be built for the Lord should be of great magnificence and fame and splendor in sight of all the nations. Therefore, I will make preparations for it." So David made extensive preparations before his death. So we think of Israel's first temple as Solomon's temple, but it really isn't. David is the one who planned and gathered all the material for that temple. Solomon was the subcontractor. David designed it, funded it, provided the building supplies, hired the workers. We organized the priesthood into 24 divisions to serve in it. and he wrote many of the psalms that would be sung at the temple. Solomon honored his father David by making David's project a reality. 1 Kings 5. When Hiram, king of Tyre, Tyre. Do you see a map in your head? And you go up to the top left of the map?
It's on the
Tyre and
coast.
Sidon, remember? We just saw prophecies about them out of the text. So, when Hiram, king of Tyre, heard that Solomon had been anointed king to succeed his father David, he sent his envoys to Solomon because he had always been on friendly terms with David. Solomon sent back this message to Hiram. You know that because of the wars waged against my father David from all sides, he cannot build a temple for the name of the Lord, his God, until the Lord put his enemies under his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, and there is no adversary or disaster. I intend, therefore, to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord told my father David when he said, your son, whom I put on the throne in your place, will build the temple for my name. So Solomon said to Hiram, give orders that cedars of Lebanon be cut for me. Remember, Tyre and Sidon were known for their forest. My men will work with yours, and I will pay you for your men whatever wages you set. You know that we have no one skilled in felling timber as the Sidonians. When Hiram heard Solomon's message, he was greatly pleased and said, praise be to the Lord today, for he has given David a wise son to rule over his great nation, and I'm going to make a lot of money off of it. So Hiram sent word to Solomon, I have received the message you sent me, and will do all you want in providing the cedar and juniper logs. So the work began. And in 1 Kings 5, King Solomon conscripted labor from all Israel. Was that in David's plan?
No.
Was that in God's plan?
No.
30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month, so that they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. In other words, they were not paid to go there for that month. Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stonecutters in the hills, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project and directed the workers. So here is where Solomon's gets hated by the people. The people begin to hate him and have derision. Remember, when we talked about Solomon, that was like the beginning of the end for him, because it just built this negative thing where he was causing more and more slave labor, basically of the Israelites, of his own people. So it was a massively expensive undertaking, and that's how he afforded to get the work done. So we learned that Solomon began the project in the 480th year after the Israelites went forth from the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of his reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, which was 966 BC. You might say, who cares, Laura? Well, I thought this was an interesting point because of what the dog says. That, by the way, gives us the dates for the Israelites' exodus from Egypt at 1444 BC. Just count backward 480 years from 966 BC. In case you want to know how scholars know when the children of Israel came out of Egypt, there you go. That's how they do it. Because this passage tells us they had been out that long, looking back. So see how smart you're going to be? Okay, let's look at 1 Kings 6. So Solomon built the temple and completed it. He lined its interior with cedar board walls. The interior walls with cedar boards, paneling them from the floor of the temple to the ceiling. So you've got these beautiful stone walls, and he's putting cedar wood over them. And then in the cedar walls are carved in flowers and gourds, and so there's carvings in these cedar walls. He partitioned off 20 cubits at the rear of the temple with cedar boards from floor to ceiling to form within the temple an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. The main hall in front of this room was 40 cubits long. The inside of the temple was cedar carved with gourds and open flowers. Everything was cedar. No stone was to be seen. So the temple was beautiful, cut limestone, and then the interior was fully lined with cedar wood from Lebanon. all carved into gourds and flowers. It was beautiful. And who planned that? David. He prepared the inner sanctuary with the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold and also overlaid the altar of cedar. Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold, and he extended gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold. So he overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. So this was an astoundingly beautiful temple, not large, but glistening and a sparkling gem, just really precious. First Kings tells us that the construction was completed in the 7th year. So Solomon was on time and on budget, and he did it exactly according to the plans that David had left for him. Remember this picture? We don't have an actual photo, right?
No.
This is a rendering because it ended up being destroyed and we don't really know. But we have all the exact measures of everything and a pretty detailed description. So based on that, this is what we think it looked like. It had stood 370 years. It was the pride of Jerusalem, and it was a centerpiece of Israelite worship. It was the jewel in Jerusalem's crown. Imagine the shock the exiles felt in Babylon when they heard the news that this temple had been completely destroyed. We saw in the history of the Kings and in Chronicles, we saw where they kept taking some of the pieces and selling it, or stuff, so they had deteriorated it some over time. But this was what they were used to looking at, even if you had some of the things deteriorated. So imagine the exiles coming back and there being nothing, the temple completely destroyed. So it became destroyed after Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judah. He razed Jerusalem, took its people captive. He incorporated Phoenicia and the former Assyrian provinces of Sicilia, which is Turkey, and into his empire. So we went through this when we did the book of Daniel, right? Nebuchadnezzar dies peacefully in Babylon. He was followed by 3 kings, Amel-Marduk, Nergal-Sharezer, and Labashi-Marduk. And that's exactly how those names are pronounced. And remember, it's hard to say, not to say Abondigus. Nabonidus is, he was murdered in a conspiracy led by Nabonidus. Belshazzar, who we read about in Daniel, it was a part of that famous scene with the writing on the wall. So after murdering his predecessor, Labashi-Marduk, Nabonidus reigned as the last king of Babylon. Meanwhile, Cyrus inherited the kingship of Persia from his father Cambyses. Expanding his kingdom eastward, Cyrus conquered Elam and its capital of Susa in 540 BC and the city of Opis on the Euphrates River. Cyrus entered Babylon, and Nabonidus, who was staying in the city, surrendered without a fight. So the Babylonian Empire thus ended. Persia took over, and under the reign of Cyrus the Great, Persia was the greatest empire to sit on the face of the earth until that time. This is the area that it covered. And I know, isn't that amazing? I better find Jerusalem for you.
Yeah.
So otherwise you can't get oriented. Let's see, here.
Oh, wow.
So look, you got all the way down through Egypt. You've got all the way up here through Macedonia, Crete, that whole area. It's going north, Armenia, all this area, and then all the way to India. This
Where is
whole-
that? All the way to what?
India. Up here is where Babylonia is. Well, most of the maps we've been looking at only went to, we were only, Babylonia was way out there, right? But Persia came in and took all of this. Of course, did we have any prophecies about that? That they would come from the north, sweep through the land? I think we had several prophecies about that, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is the Persian Achaemenid Empire, united by Cyrus the Great, 559-530 BC. It spans from Libya and Macedonia all the way to Egypt in the south and Asia Minor in the north, to the Tigris-Euphrates River, all the way over to India and Afghanistan. It was a huge empire, and Cyrus does something totally unexpected. I think you know it. Something without precedence in the ancient world. Let's read Ezra. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah. We just finished Jeremiah. The Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realm and also to put it in writing. This is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem and Judah. Any of his people among you may go to Jerusalem and Judah and build the temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, the God who is in Jerusalem, and may their God be with them. And in any locality where survivors may now be living, the people are to provide them with silver and gold, with goods and livestock, and with free will offerings for the temple of God in Jerusalem. Does he understand God?
No.
He thinks God is in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So this proclamation was actually written on an Akkadian cuneiform script, a clay cylinder that measures 16.4 inches by 7 inches. And here it is.
Oh, wow, yeah.
This is called the Cyrus cylinder. It was discovered in 1879 by Hormuz Rassam, an Assyrio-British archaeologist, during an excavation of Babylon conducted by the British Museum. The cylinder consists of 45 lines of text, and they read in part, I returned to these sacred cities on the other side of the Tigris, the sanctuaries which have been ruins for a long time, the images which used to live therein, and established for them permanent sanctuaries. I also gathered all their former inhabitants and returned to them their habitations. This is the key. May all the gods whom I have resettled in their sacred cities ask daily Bel and Nebo, Cyrus's gods, for a long life for me, and may they recommend me to their God. So what was his motivation?
Yeah.
One more God.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the real motivation is that the land was destroyed by all these wars and fighting. If he sends the people back into the land and they rebuild, then he can tax them.
Yes.
And he can tax them.
Follow the money.
So he begins to make money off of them. He's not making money off of them by having all these impoverished settlements and people working as slaves. That doesn't earn you any money. But if you send them out and then you say, just remember to send me my 10% or whatever it is, right? Okay, sorry. That's a part of the story, right? Back to Ezra 1, verse 5. Then the family heads of Judah and Benjamin and the priests and Levites, everyone whose heart God had moved, prepared to go up and build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. All their neighbors assisted them with articles of silver and gold, with goods and livestock, and with valuable gifts, in addition to all the free will offerings. And they were so happy they even wrote a psalm about it. Psalm 126. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. I've heard that this is the kind of psalm they would sing as they marched up the hill toward Jerusalem. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Restore our fortunes, Lord, like streams in the Negev. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them. We shall come rejoicing. Yep. But not many returned. Sadly, the Babylonian captivity began in 605 BC and it ended in 539 BC. Most of those living in Babylon in 539 BC were born in Babylon and had never been to Jerusalem. That's certainly true of Ezra and Nehemiah, two of the major figures who do return. In fact, Ezra draws up a list of those Jews who returned in the first wave in 539 BC. Here's the chart. This is the number from the different tribes that actually did return. In total, it's about 30,000 people. So perhaps 10% of the Jews in Babylon actually returned to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple. And that's an optimistic estimate. In more recent times, what percent of Jews that were scattered came back? Like if you look at the nation of Israel and you consider their history and how they got scattered by the Holocaust and by other things, and then Israel became a nation. Did all the Jews empty out of everywhere else? There was just a remnant that's gone back. The others have profited well in all of the places that they've gone. But so those Jews that did return at this time, they put to work, and the second temple was started in 538 BC, but because of problems, they did not resume. They stopped, and they didn't resume again until 520, and before it was completed. But here's the reaction of that rebuilding of the temple by the people, the survivors that came back. But many of the older priests and Levites and family heads who had seen the former temple wept aloud when they saw the foundation of this temple being laid. While many others shouted for joy, no one could distinguish the sound of the shouts of joy from the sound of weeping, because the people made so much noise and the sound was heard far away. So there was such a disappointment that this is what's left, because we had this beautiful, beautiful thing before. So the older ones knew and had seen the prior temple. They were shocked. That wouldn't change until the time of Herod the Great. Now Herod the Great, he came along. He was appointed by the Roman Senate as King of the Jews. And Herod was a Roman client king, and his job was to maintain peace and generate tax revenue. So he figured out a good way to generate tax revenue. What could I do? Get all these Jews back here and spend their money. So he builds this. He builds a temple. This is just a model. It was 5 football fields in length. The right northeast corner is 9 stories tall. The platform itself is 37 acres. So the southern wall extends 3 football fields in length, and the platform the other way extends 5 football fields in length. So it's a 3 by 5 football fields, if you want to get a feel for it. So they estimate that 1 million people could be in that space. Wow. Herod the Great was charged with keeping the peace and generating tax revenue. He got 1 million people to come to town 3 times a year, right? Often staying a week or more.
Oh, man.
Like you build a city, kind of, right?
It just attracted the Jews to Rome. So they would come to see Jerusalem, and Rome owned Jerusalem, so they were making money off of it. That's why they were so cooperative for so long and actually built this thing. Huh. So here's a temple model. It shows the 8-story tower with the gold trim that was at the top. It was stunning. But this temple too was destroyed during the Great Jewish War against the Roman Empire in AD 77. So that's after Christ has died. The temple burned and collapsed in AD 70. Some would say the Jews declaring war on the Roman Empire was one of the dumbest decisions in all of history. They were no one to be fighting the whole Roman Empire. That's just not going to work. So excavations at the Western Wall from 1993 to 1997 exposed the Herodian Street. You can see the street there, and those stones at the far end fell from the temple when it was destroyed in AD 70. They remained there. They fell nearly 2,000 years ago. Detail of the fallen stones, many still charred from the intense fire. The stones are still there. But here's the point. When Ezekiel is transported to Jerusalem in divine visions, the temple in a restored and healed land, what he sees, in fact, never came to pass. There never was. That temple was never built. The one he saw, the one we see in Ezekiel, did not come to pass. That one was not built. So was that a different temple? So the temple described by Ezekiel is either a fantasy or it's a temple that will exist sometime, maybe sometime in the eschatological future. Let's take a look at this temple that never was built, and we don't know if it's the same as the other one or not. I'll show you it's not the same. So Ezekiel's temple, God takes up residence in his new temple. This is the vision that he saw, Ezekiel 40. I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. He was standing in the gateway with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. The man said to me, Son of man, look carefully and listen closely and pay attention to everything I'm going to show you, for that is why you have been brought here. Tell the people of Israel everything you see. I saw a wall completely surrounding the temple area. The length of the measuring rod in the man's hand was 6 long cubits. You know how long that is? Somebody said 9 feet.
9 feet, yeah.
9 feet. Each of which was a cubit and a handbreadth. I don't know whose hand. Someone said it was
Maybe it's 10 or
whoever
11
the-
feet.
Someone said whoever the king was at the time, that would be the handbreadth. I don't know. He measured the wall. It was 1 measuring rod thick and 1 rod high. Then he went to the east gate. He climbed its steps and measured the threshold of the gate. It was 1 rod deep. The alcoves for the guards were 1 rod long and 1 rod wide, and the projecting walls between the alcoves were 5 cubits thick, and the threshold of the gate next to the portico facing the temple was 1 rod deep. Then he measured the portico of the gateway. It was 8 cubits deep, and its jambs were 2 cubits thick. The portico of the gateway faced the temple. I have no idea what jams are. I know what jam is, huckleberry fat jam or something, but I don't know what they are. But it goes into all kinds of detail. And sometime when you're having trouble going to sleep at night, maybe you should read that. But 3 chapters there where it describes every measurement of every piece. And I was very happy to find a picture. So whoever this is, they drew a picture using the measurements that were given and the description. So this is a rendition. You enter by the east gate into the threshold. There are 6 guard chambers on each side of the entry. Have you heard of that on any of the other temples? No. That's something different. The shape is kind of similar though, isn't it? The walls are 6 cubits or 10.2 feet high. Moving into the courtyard is the great altar. On either side are outer courtyards. That's kind of similar. The tower is 60 cubits or 100 feet high. On either side is a 60-foot structure making the temple structure. Then there are gates on the south and the north and the west. You are welcome to go to this www.bibliaprints.com and see they have some animated drawings of this where you can look at it more closely. You're welcome to. But my question is, do you see that anywhere in life?
No.
Even the descriptions, anything described this way? Not in this level of detail. But Ezekiel was very clear in his descriptions for those 2 whole chapters. Look at chapter 43. Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. The vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when he came to destroy the city, and like the vision I had seen by the Kibar River, and I fell face down. In that vision, he saw the pillar of cloud leaving. What does he see now? He sees it coming to this temple that was just described. It's a stunning vision. Now the glory of God, the pillar of cloud and fire, returns by the same route it left. This is the very same vision Ezekiel had seen at the Kibar River, but in backwards. It's coming back again. Chapter 43, verse 4. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east. Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. While the man was standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. He said, Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. Are you hearing this? So like this temple that we've never seen, God is saying that he's going to inhabit there. He's going to be there. He said, this is the place, my throne, and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. The people of Israel will never again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings by their prostitution and the funeral offerings for their kings at their death. When they place their threshold next to my threshold and their doorpost beside my doorpost, with only a wall between me and them. They defiled my holy name by their detestable practices. So I destroyed them in my anger. Now let them put away from me their prostitution and the funeral offerings for the kings, and I will live among them forever. So the glory of God is going to be in this new place, and God now gives us the details of that place, starting in chapter 44, verse 4. Then the man brought me by way of the north gate to the front of the temple. I looked and saw the glory of the Lord filling the temple of the Lord, and I fell face down. The Lord said to me, Son of man, look carefully, listen closely, and give attention to everything I tell you concerning all the regulations and instructions regarding the temple of the Lord. Give attention to the entrance to the temple and all the exits of the sanctuary. Say to rebellious Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Enough of your detestable practices, people of Israel. The Levites who went far from me, and when Israel went astray, and who wandered from me after their idols, must bear the consequences of their sin. They may serve in my sanctuary, have charge of the gates of the temple, and serving in it. They may slaughter the burnt offerings and sacrifices for the people, and stand before the people and serve them. I had no vision for our reason to think that the Israelites were going to be offering sacrifices at a temple sometime in the future. So this is wrecking my eschatological future idea. Right?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But the Levitical priests who are descendants of Zadok and who guarded my sanctuary when the Israelites went astray from me are to come near to minister before me. They are to stand before me to offer sacrifices of fat and blood, declares the sovereign Lord. They alone are to enter my sanctuary. They alone are to come near my table to minister before me and serve me as guards. And chapter 45:1. When you allot the land as an inheritance, you are to present to the Lord a portion of the land as a sacred district, 25,000 cubits long and 20,000 cubits wide. The entire area will be holy. Of this, a section 500 cubits square is to be for the sanctuary, with 50 cubits around it for open land. I would like to know when and where this is going to happen. I don't understand this. Do you understand it?
The sacrifices I don't, because if it's in the future, that's supposed to have been, Jesus took care of that, so.
So is it
makes
because
sense.
Israel did not accept, or some of the Israelites did not accept Jesus? Are the Jews going to have a separate thing from us? I don't know. It says, and there will be a sacred place in which God dwells, and God commands that all the details of the Mosaic law be fulfilled. The 5 great sacrifices, the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, the fellowship offerings, sin offering, guilt offering, the pilgrimage festivals, the Passover, Pentecost, and tabernacles, the Sabbath, and the ritual laws.
So they will be very separate.
Isn't the temple going to be rebuilt during tribulation?
Yeah, but it sounds like it's destroyed by the Antichrist, right?
Yes.
And then, is that temple going to look like this? I would like to know those people that are the Jewish people that are saving the materials for the new temple. I wonder if they used this for their plan. Is that their plan? Does anybody know? I don't know. I want to look that up and see what their floor plan is. Does it match this? Because this is not like the tabernacle, and it's not like the other temple. What were you going to say?
So
Isn't
Jesus only died for the Gentiles and not the Jews?
See, this is really weird. Judah and for Israel, one people united under one Davidic king. They will serve under one God, faithful to the covenant God had made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is a new covenant in the sense that it no longer written on stone, but on the very hearts of the people, a people who have learned from their chastisement and who have been redeemed by their God. This temple never existed. It could be related to an eschatological temple that is described in Revelation, but it's when you're at home trying to figure this out because you're curious, don't look at the time of tribulation. Consider after the millennium. There's some interesting descriptors after the millennium, but I still don't understand the deal about the sacrifices being offered, because I thought that was let go of, and now we're in a new covenant. So I'm very curious about that. So if you read in Revelation, the last, I think it's chapters 20 and 21, I think is where it's at. But there's a passage that says there is no temple. So that's interesting to me too. So read that, see what you think. So we have a week to contemplate, and then the following week we're going to do the last portion of Ezra, Ezekiel, so that we can see what he says and doesn't say. Now, do we expect to know everything or understand everything we hear?
No, we expect you to know it.
Oh, expect me to.
Yes.
Good one,
Yeah,
Vern.
the key is that there are many things in Revelation that we don't quite understand. But the idea is that when the prophecies begin to happen, you see them happening and you recognize them because of the pieces you know. If in these visions that they were given of the future, that they were given of their future, they couldn't imagine what that would look like. But when they see it happen, then they recognize it, and they recognize it as God's hand, God's work. Because who would have ever thought that that could ever happen, right? So remember, Daniel was reading, what book was he reading that said that Cyrus would send the people back? Was it Ezra? Daniel, while he was in captivity, read the end of, which book was it?
Was it Jeremiah?
Was it Jeremiah?
I don't know.
And it said that that they would send the people back. So Daniel was in office still when Cyrus came to power. And the rumor is that Daniel went to Cyrus and showed him where his name was written that he would send the people back. We don't understand all of how God's prophecies work. We're just expected to hear them, take them in, and watch and see. And as his work happens, our faith grows because we can see that he can do that. So I can see that God has the power to heal. He has the power to do anything he wants to do. And when he says he's going to do it, he does it.
And it was a work of God that Cyrus didn't just laugh Daniel off.
Right,
Right.
right. These things are also interconnected with one another. Okay, so feel free to look in Revelation and see if you can find. Someone said, well, maybe it's in the millennium. Maybe there's a temple in the millennium. Or maybe there's a time when God has to bring the people to Jesus, because we have a lot of Jews right now who are not Messianic Jews. So is there something with that? Is he going to let them live under that old covenant? I don't know the answer to that. We'll be curious to see what we can find. If you find any tips on it, let us know. If you look up, I'm going to try to look up that place that's gathering the materials for the new temple. I would be very curious if they're using this passage out of Ezekiel as their design. Is that their floor plan? Did they use that for the floor plan for the new temple? That would be very curious, wouldn't it? Okay, let's pray. Father, thank you for giving us the ability to see what you have in mind. I pray, Lord, that our